evening to take us through where things currently stand on the energy transition that India is hoping to make, and more importantly, what the road ahead looks like.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the Minister for joining us here this evening. Before we talk about the energy transition, Mr. Puri, let me start by asking you about what we are seeing happen as far as the crude markets are concerned. We've seen an almost 7 to 8% drop just this week. That bodes well for economies like India, and I'm guessing that makes you a much more relieved man, given the fact that there's so much volatility and uncertainty, but crude heading lower, and the expectation is it will remain lower given the fact that OPEC and OPEC Plus have decided now not to go in for the production cuts.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this interactive session. Just as an opening comment, my sense of relief doesn't just depend on where international oil prices are, because the real world out there is a little more complex. But I think yours is a very focused question. And whilst it's true that international prices have remained steady and declined, I would say, I choose my words very carefully, I wouldn't say appreciably, because there is a part of me, because I happen to be the line minister of a country which is dependent on imports up to 88%. So there's a part of me which says that they should come down further. But then there are parts of me, like two of my companies, ONGC and Oil India Limited, who were telling me the other day, ye to bahut kam bahut niche aa gaya, hamari profit. So it's a very complicated world out there. What I look for, and that's where my relief comes, that in the midst of global turbulence, and there's no shortage of that. You and I have discussed this in the past, the ongoing military operations between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, the fairly high levels of tension between the state of Israel, Iran, the Middle East generally, periodic attacks by, non-state actors.
Yes.
I use the word carefully. Why is it that in spite of all that, prices have remained steady and declined? My understanding is that the market factors all this in already. But the real issue is the economic situation, I think, in the world's second largest economy. If you have a $19 trillion economy and that gives you the impression, and I'm not taking names, you see, it's ultimately demand and supply.
Yes.
And I was very encouraged by your reference just now to OPEC having decided not to undertake production cuts. Hey, wait a minute. We had a production daily of 102 million barrels per day.
Yes.
They reduced their production by 5 million. I've seen statements by OPEC Plus to the effect that they will unwind those production cuts. Now, I'm on your side. If after the drop in oil prices, will they still, and I'm not tempting anybody, but I'd like to see, because they've told me at a bilateral level that they will, unwind. There are two things that I'm interested in. There is more oil in the market available. There's no shortage of availability. The price levels are maintained essentially on account of artificial holding back.
Right.
If the total amount of oil which is available in the world is allowed to be available, then I think we'd be in a slightly more comfortable situation. We have so far, Shireen, navigated the terrain reasonably well. We've ensured availability. On that, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
We have ensured affordability. And I have a few things to tell you about that, no doubt. And on top of that, we've managed a fairly significant green transition on all fronts.
Thank you very much for very comprehensively setting the context of the balancing act. And you're very right in pointing out that especially as far as the oil and gas sector is concerned, you do have a balancing act because you do have to keep in mind the interests of the companies that report to you as well. But let's talk about the energy transition, sir. And one of the decisions, in fact, the first decision taken by the cabinet in the third term of the government was the solar rooftop scheme that the Prime Minister announced, and it got the cabinet approval and the cabinet nod. So it's very clear that this continues to be an area of priority for the government, both in terms of bandwidth as well as in terms of government resources. Now, lay out for me what you believe have been the major milestones achieved so far. And in terms of targets, we just had, Dr. Gavin talking about setting ambitious targets. And by the way, sir, that was a masterclass on, the energy transition. So thank you very much for highlighting, the world and how it is being reshaped by companies like Honeywell. But back to the question in terms of the targets that the government is working towards and what you believe the priorities now need to be.
First of all, on the balancing act, make no mistakes, I'm on the side of lower prices of oil. Because if you're 88% dependent on imports, obviously the interests of one or two companies, they're my friends, both in the public sector and the private sector, their interests will take second. If the prices come down further, as a country, we benefit, number one. Number two, the green transition, you mentioned the solar rooftops, very significant. That's a scheme which is, I think, very dear to the Prime Minister's heart, but it's one of many steps that he has taken. When he assumed responsibility in 2014, our total biofuel blending was 1.53%, if I remember correctly. Today, last month, I think we did 15.8%. We are today, in terms of biofuel blending, the second largest economy. I mean, Brazil, us, we've overtaken the United States in terms of sheer volumes because our population base, our consumption. By the way, 67 million people go to fill up at the retail stations every day. Now, 67 million, 6.7 crore people, which means if your blending target is 20% by ethanol year ending October 2025, which is 1 year from now, we've already saved 99,000 crores on foreign exchange. We've given our farmers money. So it's a conversion of, you're turning the providers, your annadatas are also becoming urjadatas. They are becoming providers for it. So there are a lot of things going on. Biofuels, the feeds are increasing. Earlier it was just sugar and sugarcane juice based. Today you've got agricultural waste, parali. You're making it from bamboo. We're going to start very soon. You're making biofuels from industrial gases, third generation, hopefully very soon. Compressed biogas. You're increasing the feed. Maize has become, makkah has become a very important feedstock for biofuels. At the heart of all this, apart from whenever you're talking about sustainability, you're talking about the impact on the individual consumer.
Correct.
Now, if you have moved from, say, natural gas or cylinder gas, okay? Now, the difference, cylinder gas is made from, crude oil and, refineries, etc. Natural gas comes from the Earth's surface. I was just doing a calculation today, and I immediately, when I was seeing that presentation, I said I must mention this to Shireen. So I've come with this statistic I want to share with you. Today we have 33 crore total LPG connections in the country. And out of those 33 crore connections, we have, Shireen, 10 crore 35 lakh Ujjwala connections.
Correct.
We were calculating the cost of cooking medium, that is through the cylinder, for one family in a day. And I came across this figure which I checked, cross-checked. if you are a beneficiary of an Ujjwala connection,
Yes.
and you're getting the cylinder at 500 rupees, let's say for the purpose of calculation,
Yeah.
then one family's cooking expenditure per day is little over 5 rupees, which is 7 cents. And if you are a non-Ujjwala beneficiary, if you are a normal cylinder, this thing, it is, I think, about 12 rupees, which is about 14 cents or so, depending on the dollar exchange rate. Where in the world, and by the way, if you have piped gas, then you're already 30% cheaper than that.
Yes.
Where in the world has a government, a democratically elected government, ensured this movement away from cooking on kerosene, coal, wet wood, and all in the span of 10 years? You know, when my friends in the opposition make a political point over, हमारे ज़माने में इतने की थी, अच्छा तुम्हारे ज़माने में तो cylinder था ही नहीं. I mean, we have a population of 1.4 billion. Let's say the population has remained, given minus. Total number of cylinders in 2014 were hard. 14 crores. Today they're 33 crores and growing. And the Ujjwala wasn't there. Ujjwala is 10 crores. And Ujjwala, by the way, 80% of Ujjwala connections have gone to the rural areas, where the propensity to use firewood and coal is much higher than that. This is one. Second, coming back to your, and look, gas, we have what now? We have 1 crore 25 lakhs pipe gas connection. We have a pipeline of 22,000 kilometers, which we are going to take to 33,000 kilometers, which in effect will cover the entire nation. Okay? Now, again, you see, when oil prices fall, everybody is very happy, but there are two companies which will turn around and say, no, but we refine and we should. So there will be some guys who are dealers in cylinder gas who will say, no, it should be a little longer, but we balance all that out. The rooftop scheme. If you look at the basic philosophy, whom are you benefiting? You're benefiting the household which has a rooftop solar panel.
Yeah.
You're going to provide, by the way, you're going to give them a subsidy to acquire the panel.
Yes.
Then you say you use 300 units for your own consumption. And the excess that you get, you put a charging station so that you can charge your vehicle, two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler. And the excess on top of that you can put into the grid. Now, how is this changing the landscape? My first submission to you, ma'am, is that it has already changed the landscape. Secondly, the solar top is going to do wonders in terms of the enthusiasm with which it's being received, what I see as the rollout. Where are we going next? My own view is that whilst all this is being discussed, green hydrogen, which I regard as the fuel of the future, that is making its impact felt.
I'll get to green hydrogen in just a second, Mr. Puri. Let's address a couple of the issues that you raised, and let's start by talking about the gas economy, because as you pointed out yourself, we've seen a big shift as far as the gas economy is concerned. On CNG specifically, given the fact that automakers now are also looking at the possibility of using CNG for vehicles more and more beyond just the four-wheelers, and now onto two-wheelers, we've got the first two-wheeler being launched as well. Are you looking at a significant CNG network expansion also?
Absolutely. First, the gas economy per se. I think when we took a decision that we were going to use, or rather increase the use of gas in our energy mix from 6% to 15%, a lot of people were initially somewhat skeptical. And I use the word skeptical, will say, well, this requires a investment about $500 billion. Where is this going to come from? But as we are moving along, you see it's coming. There was a second issue related to this, which was not so often discussed. Is gas really a green fuel? Is it green? And I think we got over that very quickly, because any determination of what is green is in relative terms. And everybody, I think, came to the conclusion is gas is as green as you can be, but compared to cooking coal and kerosene and wet wood, it's absolutely, desirable. Today, the fact that internationally more and more gas is likely to be available. Again, I'm choosing my words very carefully because you don't know how the market develops. So we have dealt with issues relating to pricing. Earlier we had a difficulty because we were using a formula which was based, I think, on 4 hubs.
Yes.
And it was very, once in 6 months you did the calculation.
Correct.
We changed all that. We brought it down to 2. We introduced a floor and a ceiling. And today gas prices have been by and large very stable. But again, it's a commodity of which we just definitely need more immediately, because you have to prioritize its availability between different competing sectors of the economy.
Yes.
I mean, there's compressed gas, what you call city gas. There's the requirement of the fertilizer sector, and a whole host of them.
Yeah.
I am reasonably optimistic today that in the coming years, again, I don't want to be too sick, we are now in 24, 25 to 2025 will certainly be a bit of a challenge, but come 26, 27, the overall supply of gas will be there. Coming to your question on CNG cars, I must confess, in the 3 years that I've been here, initially I was a little worried because gas prices were going very high.
Yeah.
And I said that if some automobile manufacturers have to base their commercial decisions on how much to invest in which sector, will they pull back from CNG? And I'm very happy to inform you they didn't. Today, more and more CNG vehicles are coming on the market. And I think the experience of anyone who has a vehicle which is not entirely fossil fuel. I mean, today you have got vehicles which are electric partly and partly using petrol.
Yeah.
But I think the hybrid next generation is going to be the main thing, that you, up to 40 kilometers, the electric battery is working. After that, you will be using biofuels, ethanol, and the cost is very, very, very. Even others who are driving electric vehicles, they all, they're not just enamored because of it, the novelty of it, or the technology, but also it's a
the
more
cost of ownership.
effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Since you're talking about electric vehicles, sir, let me address that issue as far as electric vehicles are concerned. What we're seeing world over today is a tapering down of the subsidies being provided to the electric vehicle space, and that has certainly impacted demand. We are awaiting clarity on whether we are going to see FAME 3 in the same avatar or in a different avatar. We were expecting it to happen around the budget or post the budget. It's still taking a bit longer. Is it likely to be reshaped significantly from its previous
If you're
avatar,
talking about subsidies and money coming out of the exchequer, for that, I'm the wrong guy to talk to. I think you should invite one of my colleagues dealing with the subject. But no, let me put it this way. This personal view, the viability and success of any of these schemes will be real, and it is real, when it is viable in and of itself. It should not be dependent on a subsidy scheme, because then it's a little artificial. I think we've done very well. We have moved from an era of generally available subsidies to more specific targeted subsidies. When you talk of green hydrogen, the fact that 19,700 crores was set aside for
the PLI
for electrolyzers is a case in point.
Yeah.
Now, what do you need to do? I think FAME 3, it will be rolled out. What is the mechanics? What are the amounts itself, etc.? I think what one needs to acknowledge is that the government has played it right. I mean, there has been a rollout, there has been encouragement, but how much more will get into that? I am these days going through a very interesting exercise because, we have gone from a system or situation of anxiety when I was told broken rice is not available, when I was told, sugar is not going to be available. Now everything is available in abundant quantity and everybody wants a better price for this thing. They will point out to, how the increases have taken place, what is the formula. And I, of course, jokingly tell them, hey, wait a minute, if everybody is going to get an increasing price, then I hope somebody doesn't reach the conclusion that, listen, it's cheaper for me to refine crude oil and provide petrol than to make ethanol. I'm saying it in a lighter way.
Yeah.
But it's a very healthy system which can have this discussion at 15.9% of ethanol fuel blending. Equally with the other things, electric vehicles, international blip has taken place, I think, for a variety of factors. Some of the larger users, like these mass transportation companies like I don't want to take any names.
Yeah.
They have had slightly little bit doubts because the issues, if you are having a fleet of 3,000 cars, then you look at not only the cost of running, but you also look at the cost of maintenance.
Right.
You look at other things. But believe me, I travel quite extensively. I think that technology change is here.
Yeah.
Even when we do projections on how much of fossil fuel are you going to use, let's say in 2040, everybody makes a healthy allowance for the fact that there will be alternate fuels, there will be electric vehicles, etc. So the direction is there. So once the direction in terms of the trajectory is clear, occasional up and down will be subsumed by that.
Well, let me ask you your opinion on the comment that came in from your colleague, Mr. Gadkari, Mr. Puri, where he
I think that's very unfair for you to ask me. No, but I'll happily answer. Yeah.
Because it is something that again has been on the table for a long time. Whether there should be disincentives for the use of diesel, and he's now.
Look, listen. Mr. Gadkari is my senior colleague. He's also politically, a very tall leader, etc. So. I have the highest respect for him. But I think that remark, I don't want to interpret the remark, but I think I know where the remark came from. I mean, anyone who is in the transportation-related business, whether you make roads, highways, or you do that, you want to move into cleaner fuels.
Yeah.
So you want to use diesel for agriculture purposes, you want to use diesel, and you want the vehicles to be more that way. So I think the comment which got attention was that we will tax it out of or some, I don't know. But but this is all, but it took just few hours and then it was very clear. I personally, by the way, he's not the only one. A lot of people in individual capacity have talked about it. But that's not government policy. Government policy is as it is rolled out. And tell me, we all want to move into a situation where the use of fossil fuels, crude, look, with the best will in the world, I don't see it going away. I mean, I've been doing calculations. Today we are using 88% import dependence on the amount of crude oil that we use. Let's say our domestic E&P goes up, which I'm sure it will. We are making those efforts. Still, I think for the next 20, 25 years, it's going to be around. So any policy predictions that we make on what we are using will have to take that into account, that is what is going to here to stay. Which means even though there are more electric vehicles, even though there are more hybrid vehicles which use biofuels and this thing. By the way, Mr. Gadkari also demonstrates the use of a hybrid vehicle.
Yes,
First, Mira, and the other day I saw a High-Cross Innova, which is very, it's a very good political statement to make.
Yes, he's been a big believer in the biofuel story
100%.
for very long.
He's one of the strongest pillars of support to get. PM has been vetted and he did all that, and Mr. Gadkari and several of my colleagues, we're all committed to it.
No, absolutely. One of the other aspects that was being talked about, and again, that's being prioritized by the government by way of PLI schemes, etc., the battery storage aspect and the battery storage systems as well. Mr. Puri, if you can give us some sense of what we should now expect in light of the measures that have already been taken.
Look, I can tell you battery storage for green hydrogen, pump storage, you have to produce those on a large scale in order to make these kind of fuels workable. In the case of green hydrogen, let me tell you, what you do is you take water up to a height several thousand feet and you drop it from there. You produce the electricity. That electricity then you use in order to produce green hydrogen. So it requires large acreage, and the companies which are involved in it with foreign investment are setting up these 3,000-acre sites along the coastline. When it comes to green hydrogen, I'm sorry I'm going away from battery storage.
No, not at all.
To green hydrogen. Green hydrogen succeeds or will succeed. It's a fuel of the future. You need to bring the cost down. And you can only bring the cost down provided you manufacture on scale in places where there is large demand, where you can produce it and you can consume it. Because the gas in and of itself does not lend itself to transportation. Maybe the green ammonia does, and therefore those companies are setting up export targets. But all in all, on all these fronts, apart from the availability and affordability, the green transition, whether it is, you're talking about solar panels, rooftop panels, you're talking about biofuels. By the way, I have no hesitation in saying that, at least in my mind, we are no longer looking at a 20% ceiling on biofuel blending. The 20% was put there because that 20% is the figure at which the existing parts of the components of the automobile don't need to be changed.
Right.
But today you can go into a filling station and get a kit which will help you in case there's a problem. And it's like the chicken and egg. If the feed becomes available, then the automobile manufacturers who are selling automobiles which are using a higher blend will also be on sale here. They're on sale in countries like Brazil and elsewhere. They'll also become available. So going forward, the entire ecosystem, sometimes you get the feeling one part of it is slightly slower than the other, but it depends on that. By the way, we are selling E20 mixed fuel in 15,000 stations around the country. We are also selling E100, that is 100% ethanol. In several states, I think 4 states. And we are waiting for people to come and consume it. What could you consume it for? You could consume it on a cooktop in the kitchen. You could consume it, you can retrofit your tractors to move away from diesel usage to this thing. In all that, we will have to maintain the economic viability. If you produce something but you make it very expensive, nobody's going to buy it. So our real success has lied in the fact that whether it is gas for cooking purposes, domestic cooking, or gas cylinders even for commercial purposes, or any other thing. By the way, we are the only country in the world where the prices of petrol and diesel over a 2-year representative period actually came down. Now the challenge is to keep them that way.
No, speaking of challenges, sir, let me end with that. In terms of reimagining, the companies that you look after, the refiners as well as the oil marketing companies, as we move into an era of renewable energy, as we move more and more aggressively on the energy transition roadmap and the energy transition targets, how do you reshape companies like ONGC, companies like BPCL, HPCL, GAIL, so on and so forth, because that will be a challenge as well.
First of all, you've already witnessed their transformation from typical public sector units to highly profitable, modern entities. I mean, combined profits, 1,59,000 crores of these companies. I mean, this is unheard of a few years ago. Somebody was jokingly telling me, "This sab PSUs ka bada." So I said, "PSUs ka itna bada, iska itna bada." So I mean, that's my sales talk as a line minister. No, but Total is now Total Green. Today somebody came to see me, a former colleague of mine. He said, "I want to do something ONGC has floated." That's ONGC Green. They floated it. So all of them will make the transition. But you also don't want to make them a totally sustainable green energy transition when your dependence on traditional fuels is going to be around for a longer. So that will take place seamlessly. By the way, again, I used to have this joke with my erstwhile colleague who used to say, "Ki hum ye kar denge, MNRE, kya kehte hai?" I said, electricity only accounts for 17% of our energy uses. Green hydrogen will succeed because green hydrogen will be used in my refineries. And one of the oil companies which has 11 refineries had already using green hydrogen, making it for 2. He had promised me before retirement to do another 2. I must get hold of his successor. So we are all moving in that direction.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Puri, for making it very clear the direction that we're heading in and the next steps and what the future looks like. We wish you the very best of luck as you navigate a very difficult, a very challenging environment, a very difficult global environment. And we look forward to hearing more from you on each of these issues that you've given us a very comprehensive snapshot on. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, a big round of applause. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here this evening.
I only want to say it's always a pleasure to interact with you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, sir, and Shireen for that power-packed session. Sir, before you leave us, may I now invite on stage Mr. Ashish Modi, President Honeywell India, to present the Honourable Minister with a small token of appreciation for taking the time out today to join us at the